Good afternoon, Bermuda. I'm here this afternoon to raise with the public a very serious issue of concern. This concern involves a multi-million-dollar contract for the Bda National Sports Centre and a multi-million-dollar loan that has been given to the National Sports Centre and has been guaranteed by the Bermuda government. My statement today is not intended to accuse anyone, but seeks answers to some very disturbing questions about the contract, the loan, and the government guarantee. The National Sports Centre is managed by a small board of trustees. I believe there's approximately 6 of them. One of these 6 trustees has now resigned and called for an internal investigation into how the loan and government guarantee were obtained. This trustee has alleged that the Board of Trustees never requested or approved the loan to the National Sports Centre. However, someone went ahead and arranged for a loan, and the contractor in question has apparently drawn down significant monies from the loan facility to the Sports Centre. The contractor also appears to have secured a $12,000 monthly facility payment for the next 10 years. The trustee, who has resigned properly, raised these questions with the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Youth, Culture, and Sports. The trustee properly demanded an internal investigation into these serious concerns. The Permanent Secretary confirmed that an investigation would be carried out and that the ministry was not aware of the significant monies that had been drawn down by the contractor from the loan to the Sports Centre. It is unclear whether any investigation at this point has in fact occurred. An investigation must happen, and it must happen now. If, as has been alleged by the trustee, the loan was obtained fraudulently and without the authorization of the Board of Trustees, then the police need to investigate if they are not already involved. There are a number of questions that must be answered, and I'll read off those questions to you now. If the Board of Trustees was unaware of the loan, then who took out the loan in the name of the National Sports Centre? What was the bank told about the lack of authorization by the Board of Trustees? Who signed the loan agreement on behalf of the National Sports Centre as borrower? Given that the Bermuda government was not the guarantor of this loan, given that the Bermuda government was the guarantor of this loan, the Cabinet formally approved the transaction. How can a loan have been granted to the Sports Centre when the Board of Trustees never authorized any loan? What is the position of the remaining 5 trustees? They must make their position clear to the public. I am calling on the trustees to make their position clear, to clear up the questions that are out there and the smoke that is smoldering from all of the uncertainties right now. The next question is, why are allegations being made by a trustee that the loan agreement was fraudulent? The next question is, why is this project being progressed at all when the government is in such an economic dire straits? And then the next question I had was, why is the Sports Centre entering into a multi-million-dollar contract when the Sports Centre has no funds? As you'll find in the information that I will give you, they have no funds to support or repay the monies being loaned. We owe it to the taxpayers to ensure that no further monies will be lost until we get to the bottom of this mess. And so today, I call upon the government to immediately halt the contract for works at the Sports Centre. We need an immediate investigation into how some $6 million of the Bermudian taxpayers' money has been put at risk, apparently without any authorization by the Board of Trustees. I will now entertain any questions that you might have, but let me just say, just before that, it is important to note that it was early June, in the House of Assembly, that I was made aware that the contract had been given to AESG. And The history of this goes back, of course, when the bid was put out in 2017. Apparently, a letter was issued that stated that there was a preferred option bidder that had received a letter saying this particular thing, and it was AESG. If you fast forward now from 2018 to now 2021, what has taken so long? And what conditions apparently have changed since which? And I brought to the public's notice in Parliament that back when I was asking questions in 2020, it was clear that the PLP were upset with the then chairman of the PLP party, who represents AESG, the contractor who won this bid. And he was unceremoniously voted out through a vote of no confidence by the PLP. Huge accusations have been made about the individual, the gentleman who had received this contract, apparently, to say that the PLP could no longer work with him, basically, and that this was all about a friends and family deal. I think you all remember this in the media, and I'm reminding the public that this is what took place. And so they removed him from his position and asked him to resign because there was a vote of no confidence in this individual. And so I simply just said, listen, guys, if you're giving him the contract, is what, 3, almost 4 years later, then what has changed? Please tell us, because in the public, and I'll quote this here, what was said, let me just get these quotes. Regrettably, the individual, talking about the individual who received this supposedly contract, failed to live up to the high moral standard that the officers and members have set for the party, talking about PLP and themselves. The party acted to protect and further enshrine its values. To that end, the PLP wishes to advise the public that the executive committee of the party held an emergency meeting last week, and this is going back to 2020, where a motion of no confidence was passed unanimously against chairman of the party then, Damon Wade. And so there's more inflammatory things that were put in the public to suggest that this was all about friends and family, and that the PLP, you can go and look at it for yourselves. You guys have it. I mean, in the media, it was said that there is a zero tolerance for the exploitation of party office for personal gain. This is what the PLP said about their former chairman. And now we fast forward to now, and the same individual that they degraded, that they used, quite frankly, inflammatory remarks concerning this individual, are now for the same contract giving the contract to this individual a couple of years later. One of the other concerns I have is this: if conditions have changed based on what he initially bid for, by rights this bid should be going back out. And so I'm just trying to give you some context as to why I'm asking these questions, and now we have trustees who are speaking out aloud. And so I ask these questions in the House of Assembly. And so what has ensued from there is not answers being given in the House of Assembly, but the PLP has gone ahead and answered in the public. And so that's why we are having this press conference today. So I open it up for any questions that you may have.
Just clarifying, you said we did raise it in the House, but you did not get a direct reply in the House.
So the following session, we were expecting for some replies when I raised it in motion to adjourn, and we did not receive any comment at all. The House of Assembly was shut down without any answers to those questions. What ensued, as I said, was statements being made in the public.
Mr. Cannonier, we know that the permanent secretary of the Ministry of Sport was advised of these concerns back in early June.
That is correct.
And yet we haven't had any answers. Nothing's been said by the PLP. I've personally asked government for some answers about the funding, and we've had absolutely nothing. Why do you think there is this apparent wall of silence?
That's a good question. I believe that based on the information that I'm going to share with you, I'm going to let you walk away with the information that I have. I believe that there are so many conflicting comments that have gone back as far as emails are concerned, correspondence back and forth between the ministry and the trustees, and the request by the trustees to immediately cease and desist this loan facility because it was not approved by them, that the government does not want to be transparent. And this is a government who rode on the horse in 2 elections on transparency, and we have not seen that transparency to this date concerning this matter. And so it concerns me that when basic questions are being asked, and if the media truly is asking questions and they're not getting answers, then they're raising the concern by the opposition, the concern by myself, that something is not quite right. And I'm asking, and I have done this many times in the House of Assembly, just clear it up so that we're not coming to our own conclusions, but you need to be transparent, government. Premier, you need to be transparent on this matter as to exactly what has taken place. The finance minister needs to answer to the questions that have been put out. Because if the trustee, in fact, is correct in their assertion, how do we have a contract without the director having signed off on this loan facility? And that's why the trustees are saying this loan was obtained fraudulently. If you have the information in front of you, I'm going to show it to you. The signature there on this loan facility is not by the director. And so if it is who I think it might be, I'm waiting for answers. They need to tell us who signed on this contract. I don't want to assume. But if it is who I believe it is, they're not a signator for the National Sports Centre. They have no right to sign. And so you'll see in correspondence going back and forth through these emails and the likes that the chairman did not have authority to sign off on anything when it came to, because it had not been done officially in the minutes and in meetings concerning the National Sports Centre. So it behooves me as to why we're not getting answers. And I know typically what the PLP government will do, and what the Premier has done many times before, is scream, this whole Donald Trump thing, this false media type of thing that's going on. No, they need to answer questions. At any point in time, if this was the OBA, it would be demanded that there be transparency. And I am now demanding of this government, our Premier, and all those involved, including the trustees of the National Sports Centre, to state their case clearly. If they do not state their case clearly, I am calling for the police to investigate this matter, because these are serious accusations. In fact, they may already be involved, but something needs to happen, and drawdowns have already been made. Let's be very clear. The trustees have not agreed with this here based on the correspondence. And already close to $1 million has already been expended on this facility, and agreed that $12,000 monthly in addition be given to the contractor for the next 10 years. That's a lot of money, folks. So a $3.2+ million contract now puts it at $6 million that the taxpayer is responsible for. And all to do with the fact that the trustees do not have the money to pay back this facility, and someone has gone out and secured this loan.
And yet, 3 ministers signed off on the contract. Do you think they were aware of concerns prior to signing off, or is it something that they've just discovered?
Well, based on the correspondence, it's unclear. But having been a minister, Premier before, I recognize that they may have been acting somewhat a bit of in a silo, understanding that this contract had been sitting on the table for years now. For years. And quite frankly, any other contract that sits out there that long, not being signed, should go back out to tender. Because within months, things change. And what do I mean by that? Well, let me just be clear with you. When AESG bid for this contract, they had financing in place. Understandably, COVID has come along, the financing was taken away. So now you have the National Sports Centre acting on behalf of a bidder to get a loan to allow him, or to allow the company AESG to be able to do it. That's a change in the conditions. Everyone else who bid should also have the opportunity to say, okay, well, if you're allowing for financing to take place, for one, then you should allow it for us and we should rebid on the contract because it's years later. Things have changed, but that is not the case. We see an exception here being made for this particular company to go out and to secure a facility, a loan facility. Things have changed, and the trustees of the board have said, listen, things have changed here. He no longer has the financing. So what are we going to, we don't have the money for it. So who signed for this?